Hi, I'm Dr. Antonio Graceffo, and welcome to China Economic Research. Today's episode, Religious Freedom in China. Now, the Communist Party of China promotes a belief of state atheism. Members of the Communist Party are not expressly forbidden from having a religion, but they're encouraged not to do so. In fact, under Xi Jinping, freedom of religion has been further restricted. As General Secretary of the Communist Party of China, Xi Jinping re-emphasized that members of the Communist Party of China must be unyielding Marxist atheists. Dissent. And of course, religion can often be characterized as dissent because it puts religious ideology ahead of Marxist ideology. Article 36 of the Constitution of the People's Republic of China of 1982 specifies that citizens have religious freedom. That sounds nice. However, that freedom only extends to so-called normal religious activities, which means only religious organizations organized by the CCP. These include Buddhist Association of China, Chinese Taoist Association, Islamic Association of China, Three Self Patriotic Movement, and Chinese Patriotic Catholic Association, all of which are under the State Administration for Religious Affairs and ultimately under the Chinese Communist Party. The Three Self Patriotic Movement, which I know the name sounds kind of odd, this is actually the Protestant organization, and oddly, this is one of those weird anomalies, given the sheer size of China, it's the largest Protestant organization in the world. Chinese citizens are allowed to practice religion, but only within these five organizations. Now, this means that Lutherans, Episcopals, Church of England, Baptists, Mormons, Jews, and Hindus, any religion not specifically mentioned above would be prohibited from openly practicing in China. I've been to Mormon services, and the way they got around the rule was they had to first obtain permission to hold a Bible study. They couldn't call it a church service. They couldn't have a building, so what they did was they would rent like the ballroom of a hotel or something, and they had to promise that there would be no Chinese nationals in the congregation. Only foreigners were allowed to get in. Proselytizing in public is illegal, as is holding any religious service anywhere other than authorized places of religious worship. Now, there are also home churches, or house churches as they're called, which are illegal Christian churches which meet secretly. Some foreign observers estimate that there could be as many as 54 million Chinese Christians worshiping in secret. The members and leaders of these churches are always in danger of being discovered and being jailed. And the risk goes for Falun Gong, Tibetan Buddhists, underground Catholics, and underground Uyghur Muslim organizations. Members and leaders of home churches or illegal churches have been charged with illegal religious activities or disrupting social stability. They've also been charged under Article 300 of the Criminal Code, which forbids using heretical organizations to undermine the implementation of the law. Now, sometimes when I lived in China, I just felt like it was 1984. Up was down, black was white. In the rest of the world, heretical means outside of the church. It's like China's the only place where heretical means the people inside the church are heretical. The Communist Party-led security organization called 610 Office oversees the suppression of Falun Gong, and in the past few years has also been suppressing other religions as well. So they were originally formed to suppress Falun Gong, but now their duties, their mandate have expanded to also Buddhists, Christians, and Muslims, and so forth. Catholics are obliged to limit their religious activities to official churches under the Chinese Catholic Patriotic Association, which has about 5.3 million members. The bishops are appointed by the government, and they're not allowed to recognize the Pope, not allowed to recognize the Vatican. Additionally, there are believed to be as many as 7 million Catholics who worship secretly in unlicensed churches, underground churches, and those churches recognize the Vatican, recognize the Pope. And that is one of the big schisms that actually caused the illegal Catholic churches to exist, is that they want to recognize the Pope. Now, interestingly, when I went to Catholic Church in China, they had pictures of Pope John Paul hanging everywhere, although he was no longer Pope. But they were able to celebrate Pope John Paul to some extent as a humanitarian, and I believe also, I would assume Mother Teresa as well, but he was not being celebrated as Pope. And this is one of those weird things. We'll talk about it more towards the end of this video, but about how certain civil rights leaders, like Dr. Martin Luther King and so forth, they're recognized in China. And it becomes very problematic for the government because these people, on the one hand, they were promoting civil rights, and it's a way of showing that America and other countries are very racist and that we needed these civil rights leaders to give rights to everyone. But the flip side is these people promoted civil disobedience, which China doesn't want to promote. Or in the case of Pope John Paul, not that he promoted civil disobedience, but that he promoted religion, the Catholic religion that he was the head of, and that's something that they want to downplay. Liu Baiyan is the chairman of the Catholic Patriotic Association of China and the Bishops' Conference of the Catholic Church in China. And he stated in a 2011 interview, and this is shocking. In a 2011 interview, he stated that the church needed individuals who love the country and love religion politically. They should respect the Constitution, respect the law, and fervently love the socialist motherland. And that does not sound like anything the nuns taught us back at Sunday school. Now, Tibetan Buddhism. Tibetan Buddhism has been effectively squashed by the Communist Party of China. When China invaded and annexed Tibet in 1959, they killed hundreds, possibly even thousands, maybe even tens of thousands of monks. His Holiness, the 14th Dalai Lama, was forced to flee to India, where he still lives today. And as older, prominent lamas are dying, the Chinese government has proposed their own successors to these lamas. And competition within the core of monks has grown so fierce that in 2007, the government instituted a law requiring a reincarnation application be completed and approved for lamas wishing to reincarnate. The other day, I heard a journalist refer to this as rebirth control. In 1995, His Holiness the Dalai Lama recognized the 11th Panchen Lama, who was then 6 years old. He was a Tibetan boy growing up under Chinese rule in China, Chinese Tibet. The search team of the State Council of the People's Republic of China rejected this recognition. The boy disappeared, and they whisked him away. I don't mean like he disappeared. I mean, they whisked him away. Nobody knows where he went. Nobody knows where he's living. Nobody even knows actually if he's alive or dead. The official story by the government was that he was being raised by a Chinese family, that he was happy, he was doing well in school. He had no interest in religion, had no interest in being bothered. No one has seen him. There was, I believe, in the late 1990s, either a video clip or a photo, something surfaced, but that was it. And no one's spoken to him. He's never been interviewed. And we don't know if he's even still alive. The Panchen Lama is extremely important. And if anybody's a Tibetan Buddhist scholar, please forgive me, because my understanding of Tibetan Buddhism is very minimal. But from what I understand, the Panchen Lama is really important because he helps to determine who the next Dalai Lama will be. And obviously His Holiness is getting quite old now. So a lot of the steps that China is taking in Tibet seem to be to position the Communist Party to be the ones who pick the next Dalai Lama, or to influence the selection of the next Dalai Lama. And once they do that, they'll have full control of the religion. Islam. By official account, China is home to about 21 million Muslims, but there are independent estimates that put the number at 50 million. 96% of China's Muslims, and these are the official Muslims, belong to one of three ethnic groups. That's the Hui, the Uyghur, and the Kazakh. Most of the Hui Muslims live in Ningxia, Qinghai, and Gansu province, while the Uyghur Muslims live predominantly in Xinjiang. The Kazakhs, to my understanding, the Kazakhs generally live in Xinjiang as well. The Kazakhs that I've known in China were all living in Xinjiang, living essentially among or with Uyghur, because they're all sort of Turkic, Central Asian people, and they have a lot in common, whereas the Hui tend to be more like Chinese people, more like the Han people. And from what I've seen, and again, I'm not an expert, but from what I've seen, it seems to me that the Hui live much more integrated among Chinese people, whereas the Uyghur tend to live in Xinjiang in areas that are largely Uyghur, and then the Kazakhs would live there among them. The state-run Islamic Association of China, the IAC, oversees the practice of Islam as well as the content of sermons and the interpretation of scripture. The state controls the appointments of religious leaders and approves or disapproves pilgrims going to the Hajj, going on the Hajj to Mecca. In 2001, the IAC established a committee to ensure that scriptures were interpreted in a manner that would serve the interests of the Chinese government and the Communist Party. And Muslims, particularly in Xinjiang, are strictly monitored, and even the celebration of Ramadan is tightly controlled. Now, as a Christian, I'll say that for Christmas, in some years, Chinese government would allow us to celebrate Christmas, and some years they would not. In 2012, Christmas of 2012, the government promoted Christmas. They really, really pushed it as a consumer holiday, and there were decorations everywhere, and people were giving gifts and all this, and it was a big thing. I mean, it wasn't a religious thing, but at least it was Christmas, and that was 2012. Other years, I've received messages from the Communist Party, the Communist Youth League, and they'd send us a message that said, please do not decorate for Christmas, or, don't do overt representations of Christmas, in public and things like that. One year I actually received an invitation to the Christmas party of the Communist Youth League. So there were some years that it was very liberal and some years that it wasn't. In 2018 Christmas, for Halloween and Thanksgiving, we decorated the school and we left the decorations up for about a month. And then I wanted to do the same thing for Christmas. 2018 Christmas, we were told that we could not decorate for Christmas. We could have a party, but it was only on one day, one evening, and we could only decorate the one room for that one party, and that was it. There couldn't be decorations in the hallway. We couldn't leave them up for weeks at a time. I don't remember if they actually said, or I should say, I won't say, I don't remember. It is also possible that they said we were not allowed to call it a Christmas party, but we did call it a Christmas party. But I don't know that that was allowed. And usually the way companies get around this is that they'll hold a New Year party, and they'll call it a Chinese New Year party, but they'll actually have it in time for Christmas, and they'll have Christmas decorations. But again, in years when it's very strict, you can't get away with that. And so this past year, 2019, was one of the years that was very strict, and you couldn't get away with that. In fact, they were intentionally scheduling and avoiding having celebrations of any kind during the week of Christmas, so that no one would say that that was actually a Christmas party in disguise. And, I called the vice president of the school that I used to run, and I said, how's, your Christmas party coming along and all that? And he said, no, this year we're not allowed to celebrate any foreign holidays. So it goes, in year to year, but under Xi Jinping, it seems like every year it's just getting a little tighter and a little tighter.